Now you listen to me, Buster. You're going to go out there and you're going to finish that Hail Caesar podcast. You're going to go give that speech at the feet of the penitent thief, and you're going to believe every word you say. You're going to do it because you're a podcaster, and that's what podcasters do. You're going to do it because the podcast has worth, and you have worth if you serve the podcast. You understand?
Yes, I think so.
Brother Max, thanks for joining us on the Catholic Film Club to talk about Hail Caesar.
Of all the ways that I expected this to begin, that was not one of them.
Okay. Well, that's the way I start every podcast here. So just you got to tune in more.
I guess so.
Brother Maximilian Anderson, thanks for coming. Can you tell us about a little bit about yourself and why you're here?
Yeah, sure. Like Michael said, hi, my name is Brother Maximilian. I'm a monk of St. Benedict's Abbey here in Atchison, Kansas. We are a founding and sponsoring community for Benedictine College. I am a graduate of Benedictine College, go Ravens, class of 2016. I was a focus missionary for 2 years, and within the context of my being a missionary, I discerned my call as a monk and joined the Abbey in 2018. Brother Angelus and I are classmates and good friends, and we made solemn vows. We went through like everything in terms of formation together. For initial monastic formation, we made solemn vows December 10th, 2022. So I'm
awesome.
in.
And then why are you here today?
I'm here because you reached out to the monastic community with a list of movies that you were interested in talking about on this podcast, and asked for monks to get involved in doing a podcast with you in movies that they found interesting. And I saw Hail Caesar on there, and I thought, I want to really rewatch, think kind of deeply about, and then go and have a discussion with you about any movie. That'd be the one.
I'm really glad that you centered on that one, and it was great to revisit it with your family the other day.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful experience because I think like most Coen Brothers movies generate this response, which is most of your family was engaged but a little puzzled.
That's true.
And you and I were laughing out loud.
Yeah.
I would describe you as howling.
That's probably very to it. Yes.
Well, so when did you first see Hail Caesar, and why did you jump on this one to join us to talk about?
So I remember I was a focus missionary at the time, and I remember being at new staff training, going through one of the retreats that was being preached by a Jesuit named Father Kevin Dyer, and he mentioned the movie in one of the conferences that he was giving for the retreat. And I was really intrigued by the fact that he actually kind of related that he had a similar experience. He went to go see the movie in theaters with a confrere of his, and he said that he and his confrere were laughing out loud at pretty much everything, and it seemed like most of the other people were just kind of puzzled by what was happening. And I was like, that's really interesting. That tells me that this film is probably funny in a lot of ways, but there's some real depth to it as well. And I remember watching it with a friend as a missionary, and I've encountered some of the other Coen Brothers movies in the years since. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Trying to think of anything else.
Well, I think so. We're covering this for our kind of monthly edition of a film club, and I can see us covering a lot. True Grit, they did the remake of that. And
Yeah,
I
that's
really
right.
love that movie.
That's right. Yeah, I've seen that one too.
And Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? One of the cool things about the Coens is that they are, I believe, agnostic, atheistic. Grew up in a Jewish community, and yet they have made some of the most serious reckonings with Christian faith, Catholic faith that I've seen. When they put it in their movie, they're not. They're taking it seriously. I find, which is even in this farce. I think they're really digging into what it means to not just have faith, but live faith
mm-hmm.
in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I should say that the synopsis of this movie, for anyone who doesn't know, is that this is the way I would describe it. Sort of the inciting incident is that George Clooney, who's playing Baird Whitlock, an actor in the 50s, he's working on a movie called Hail Caesar, A Story of the Christ. In the movie, that's the subtitle. And he's kidnapped by communist writers. Kind of the funny twist of this movie, one thing I love about it is that we're so used to seeing these sort of portrayal of the blacklist of just like, gosh darn it, all these writers were just stonewalled, and they totally were. The McCarthyism thing was of course like a bad thing for American society. But it is funny to see this movie double down and be like, no, they were communists and they were trying to take over the world, at least in the world of this movie. And they kind of bring Baird Whitlock on this sort of venture that they have to taint the minds of the American public, but that's not the real story.
Like they kidnap him.
They kidnap him. Sorry, didn't I say that he was kidnapped by communist writers? Yeah. And then they indoctrinate him very easily, actually, into his.
He's an airhead. He's like very open to manipulation.
The way that he interprets all of the things that they're saying is it's indicative of the way I'd say probably a lot of Hollywood people take in media. Not that I'm like the smartest guy in the entire planet, but that's not really the story, is it? He's not really the main character. Who's the main character?
I mean, it's Eddie Mannix.
Yeah. Who's Eddie Mannix?
He's the story kind of revolves around Eddie Mannix, who's this guy who he plays someone who's like pretty much the director, head of production for this big movie studio, Capitol Pictures. And he's a fixer. Like he has all these movie stars that are making these like really great movies that from Eddie's perspective, people need. Like they need to like have this experience of going to the movies and like actually having like an encounter with something that's like real, something that's genuine, a story that like says something that's authentically good, true, and beautiful. And part of their being able to do that is like from Eddie's perspective, the belief that the people who play these roles in these movies also have lives that are good, true, and beautiful. So like as often as Baird goes on a bender or like gets embroiled in like some romantic scandal, Eddie has to like fish him out of it and like make it look like he's a good guy. Same thing for like any of the other stars that he's involved with, who kind of are constantly on the brink of like falling into this pit of scandal. And like you see the environment in which like there's people who are hungry for the truth in like the newspaper columnists, the two twin sisters who are like on the lookout for like anything that they might be able to use for the sake of like giving people like what they deserve to hear, because they deserve to hear the truth. But yeah, Eddie's like there. He's there to like fix their lives and make sure that like their reputations stay intact.
And that's kind of the crux of the line that I opened with. That's him talking to Baird Whitlock after he's sort of spouting all of these kind of half-baked communists that he doesn't even really fully understand.
Mm-hmm. Which is, it's clear. Yeah, it's hilarious.
But he just sort of smacks him around and he's like, look, you're an actor, so you serve the picture, and if the picture you serve it because the picture has worth, and you have worth if you serve the picture. Mm-hmm. And by the way, we're going to get into spoilers, because I think if you're watching this or listening to this, Hail Caesar's kind of grown a cult following, actually, especially among Catholic circles. I've found, like, I think I'm only the third Catholic movie podcast to cover it in history, but not that we are jealous of the competition, or that there is a competition at all. So, so what I'm trying to say though is that the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I think the final message of the movie is the most fascinating part of it. Like, here, I'll open with a question that Eddie Mannix asks a group of religious leaders in this boardroom meeting. It's probably my favorite scene in the movie.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious.
I rewatch it all the time, and he's gotten this board together of a Catholic priest.
It's the beginning of a joke.
It really is.
Yeah, it's a priest, a preacher, a rabbi, and then an Eastern Orthodox priest.
Yeah, exactly. And he's asking them about the depiction of Jesus Christ in their movie Hail Caesar, because Hail Caesar is basically a remake of Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
You've got this Roman centurion who is struck by the presence of Christ. And so, I mean, I'm taking the subtitles seriously. The one because that's really where my journey with this movie began, was thinking like, okay, Hail Caesar, and then right under you see a story of the Christ. And then you open and the movie actually opens with an image of Christ. I mean, if you're in that room, Brother Max, now we've got a Benedictine monk at the table. Right. You've seen the picture. Does the depiction of Christ cut the mustard?
I can't say.
You can't?
No, I can't. And I think that's one of the like the crazy things about so that's actually one of the things that I noticed that the Coen Brothers are like kind of doing throughout the film. I was thinking about it, and like I noticed like a couple different moments where it seemed like they were really being very intentional about what it is that they are showing you in the film, and what like in the world of the film is shown on film. So like like they're also kind of like using characteronyms. Like the character names mean something. They tell you something about like.
I've got a whole list of those.
Yeah. So, but like one of the examples of this that I think and it's like the first time that you encounter Eddie Mannix doing his job. He's like there to bust up this. There's this like young starlet who's like doing this like sleazy photo shoot with this guy, and I was thinking about like her name, which is Gloria Delamore, I think, which means literally the glory of love. And Eddie's there because it's not fitting for the glory of love to be depicted on film, especially in the way that like, they're kind of like sleazy pictures. So he's there to make sure that her reputation remains intact. But I think like the Coen Brothers are like that's the first time you encounter Eddie doing his job. So I think they're beginning to say like, look, what it is that makes it on film actually matters. And if you try to depict something like the glory of love on film, like you're either not going to depict the glory of love, or you're going to depict something that's like a degradation of it, which is what like a sleazy photo shoot is. It's like a degradation of something that's like very true and beautiful.
There's a lot of names like that so because I think that you could read the picture cynically, because I think it's drawing a clear parallel between the Hollywood studio and really the Catholic Church. I think I could argue that's what it's trying to say. But you see that a lot with a lot of the other names. You have Baird Whitlock, so Baird is Bard, and Whitlock, it could be white hair, but it could also mean white enclosure. And so you have this, it's almost like this image of a white castle that keeps people in. You have Hobie Doyle, and Hobie from Hubert means bright and shining intellect, funnily enough. Yeah. Because Hobie is kind of a simpleton. He's kind of a simpleton.
But he's a good man.
And then Doyle apparently means dark stranger, which is interesting. But he's a stranger into this world.
Yeah, he's not a native of this land at all.
Exactly. And you could go on down. Deanne Moran, the Scarlett Johansson character, is bright and shining. Oh, go on.
I was going to say Deanne actually made me think of Diana, who's the goddess of chastity. Oh. So I think they're doing something really ironic there, which is really funny, but something that's very true.
Yeah, and I think you can see, because her last name Moran means sea warrior, and she's depicted as like a mermaid with a trident at the beginning of the movie. So they're really thinking about this stuff, and and actually, I wanted to point out a name that might be interesting to you, Eddie Mannix. So first, Eddie Mannix is a real person. They've kept the name. He was a real historical person. But this character, they've kept it. Mannix in the Old English translates to little monk.
Interesting.
What do you think about that?
That's very interesting.
Do you ever relate to Eddie Mannix?
Yeah, I'm really grateful to hear you kind of talk about the etymological meaning of the words. I had not really gone past the fact that Mannix kind of sounds like the word manic, and Eddie Mannix kind of leads this manic existence, trying to run the lives, and
maybe it kind of straightens it out.
Yeah, keep everyone out of scandal. I'd have to do a little bit more thinking about that. Yeah.
His first scene is in confession. This is actually the first scene of the movie. Is in confession. The Catholic priest. Apparently, he confesses every single day. The priest says it's really too much. You're not that bad. But he kind of interacts with the characters in this studio like a priest in a way. He's there to shepherd them and guide them. And he serves the studio because he feels the studio has worth, and that's the central conflict there. And that's why I think that even though, like I said, you could draw some clear parallels and even criticisms of Hollywood as the studio as the church. I think it ultimately is a positive depiction of this man with faith and how he acts out the faith. And it's not even evangelizes it. It's shepherding, I would say. Would you agree with that?
So kind of going. Yes, I think it's probably important to note that so what I have in mind right now is something that a friend of mine said when I was visiting with him about the movie. He said it's important to remember that the Coen Brothers are kind of they're very deep thinking existentialist Jews. So I don't know how there are certainly a lot of parallels, and I think it's very important to note that they do choose to make a movie about Jesus. They do choose to include as a main character a man who's Catholic, who goes to confession every day, somewhat maybe obsessively, but there's almost a way in which I don't know if it's a proclamation of the gospel in the same way as or a depiction of the movements of grace in the same way as something like a Flannery O'Connor story would be, because that's something that she can actually do because she's a Catholic. And I don't know if it's something that the Coen Brothers are capable of in the same way. However, they are, I think, an excellent way of asking these very real questions about what does it actually mean, and it's a preparation for receiving the gospel. And this is part of the reason why I think if I'm at that table with those guys who are being asked does the depiction of Christ cut the mustard in the movie, I can't say for sure, because the rabbi actually literally says this in that conversation. God's not in the movie. God's not in the movie. And this is one of the things that I noticed when Eddie asks to be shown the daily, the dailies from Hail Caesar. I mean, it's kind of funny because you see the narrator kind of going through all these different things, and it shifts from Rome to Paul of Tarsus on the road to Damascus, and he has the vision of Christ, but you see Paul, you see the white light, and then it cuts to this frame that says divine presence to be shot. which is really funny.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest laughs.
And then when, especially when you realize what they're saying is we can't show this to you. We can't show this to you. And another thing that I think is really, really important to note is even later in that same film reel, you see Baird Whitlock's character, the Roman centurion Autolycus, cut like in front of all these slaves, like, Romans before slaves, and he's like cutting ahead of everyone to get some water because like that's just what you do. Like the Romans go before slaves, and Jesus is the one who's like giving water to everyone, and it's another moment. It's like really funny. You don't see Jesus's face, you see the back of his head, and then Eddie's having a conversation with his secretary about like this. I think it's like, Baird's kidnapped at this point, and they're trying to get this like thing figured out because he's missing, and they don't know what to do. But what's happening in the background is you're seeing like Baird acting as Autolycus, who's looking at the face of Christ, and he's like got all these like really fascinated like facial expressions, and he kind of like breaks out of it for a moment while the director says like, more surprise, like more like be more awestruck. And I think like, the question, does the depiction of Christ cut the mustard, can't really be answered because the Coen brothers are very careful to not depict him.
That's I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
And I do. It's interesting that you pick up on the rabbi and relating to them, because I do think, that rabbi character is so funny in that scene.
Oh,
he appears there, and it's the perfect example. It's because he is the most opinionated, and yet at the end of the conversation he says, what did he say?
It's right. They go around the table, and like he just like asks them like, all right, so like what's your answer? We've had this conversation, like everyone's kind of had their opportunity to kind of spout their like own theological like musings and agenda. Like the Catholic priest has his chance, the preacher has his chance, the Orthodox priest has his opportunity to say like, I thought the chariot scene seemed a little fake.
That's sometimes how I feel like sometimes I feel like that's what I'm doing on this podcast in a way. But
and like
that's the quality of the
Jewish rabbi who like has all these things where he's like really insistent on the fact that like, God does have a people, God does have children, and we are his chosen people. Like there's this like really visceral and but like there's also this like, Jesus Christ is not God. So like there's this like kind of awareness of like the Jews are God's people. They belong to God, but like they don't acknowledge Christ as being like the Son of God, or God incarnate. And but like when because he's able to say like he's not God, he doesn't actually have a problem with how Christ is depicted in the film, because like for the Jews, God's not depicted in the film. So it's funny, like the two priests and the preacher say like, yeah, it's fine, and the rabbi's like, nah, I have no opinion.
That's I feel like that's where the Coens are in a way. They have so much to say, but they're not here to have an opinion. I think that might be what I'm responding to in their work that specifically engages with Christianity, or at least Christian characters. It's because they actually are asking a question. They don't have an agenda with this movie. They're just kind of sitting back and looking around. And it's Hollywood. I mean, it's something that they've lived in their entire lives.
It's like
their lives are devoted to it, and they're saying, "This is what we see. This is the bad. This is the good. But this is what's there." And
it's interesting to me too that they made what had to be the very intentional decision of taking Eddie Mannix out of history, who like. One of the things that I read something commentary about the movie that mentioned that the historical man was just as embroiled in like these same sort of scandals as like the stars that like whose problems he's trying to fix, and we don't get that in Hail Caesar. We see an Eddie Mannix who is an upstanding and just man. He's a good man. He cares about these people, but he doesn't have a life that's like messy and complicated in the way that theirs is. He's got a wife who loves him, that he's like faithful to, and he's got a job at a studio that he loves, that he does really well. and like he's got like a beautiful family too, a son and a daughter, and it's clear that like he loves them too, and it's in a way like he's I don't know, he's like just a good man, and he's like in a big way kind of like a father to these stars and starlets who need a real stabilizing force in their lives.
Yeah, and the conflict, his conflict in the movie, even though he's solving a bunch of problems, but they're not really a conflict for him. His conflict is whether he's going to leave. He's being offered this job by Lockheed Martin, I believe, and which is an air and space engineering.
Right. So I think it was probably before the merger, or if there was a merger. I think it's now called Lockheed Martin. He's talking to Lockheed though, and like, you know, it's not altogether clear like what it is that they do. This I thought was another significant moment of like what they're showing us is shown on film. Because what does the guy do? The guy from Lockheed, he's like trying to sell him on coming and working for Lockheed, which is this like aerospace company that builds planes, and like, but it's not altogether clear what it is that they do. But he says like, come on, like the pay will be better, the hours will be better. You won't be living this like crazy like nightlife of like needing to go in at odd hours in order to like fish your stars out of scrapes and stuff.
And you won't be dealing with frivolous movie people.
And like he's like, these are serious people, and that has a real appeal to Eddie, who's once again a good man and wants what's best for his family, because he's like, more money, the hours would be better, so I'd be able to like spend time with the family. And his wife identifies that as a good too, like, you know, the like the fewer hours and like having more predictability would be a nice thing. But I think it's significant that the guy, when they're at this like Asian restaurant and like they're like kind of behind these like beaded curtains in the booth, it's kind of like this like secretive environment, and he like kind of is talking in a low voice, and he says, I probably shouldn't be showing you this, and he shows him a picture of the hydrogen bomb that was tested at Bikini Atoll. So I think it's like really significant, again, like what are the Coen brothers showing us that's like worthy of being depicted on film? For that man, the destructive power of man by means of technology that like he's been able to reach, which like for me it's difficult to think of atomic weapons without thinking of Oppenheimer, who I think like either in an interview or like soon after like the first atomic weapon was tested down in New Mexico, quoted the Indian goddess of death.
Right.
Behold, I am become death, destroyer of worlds. So there's this like real, almost kind of divine power that this man is showing Eddie on a piece of film, and saying like, look, this is what you're going to be a part of. And it's almost somehow like, this is like the most real thing. Like man's ability to like achieve kind of like destruction by means of technology is like the most real thing. And that's like what you could like be working in service of. And yeah, I mean, Eddie's kind of the big drama for Eddie throughout the movie is like, what does he do? He's a good family man. He wants to take good care of his family, but he's a good family man at the studio, and he wants to take good care of that family too. And I think it's really striking that like he's in like an internal conflict over this. He doesn't know how to respond to it until he goes to confession again with the priest. And you know, it's been 27 hours since my last confession. Really, it's too often. You're not that bad. I snuck a few cigarettes, kind of got short with someone. He's like, okay, 5 Hail Marys. And before the priest leaves, he's like, well, wait, Father, is it wrong to do something that's easy? And the priest is like, he like, Eddie has this like this one category. Both of these things are like going to be things that can help him take care of his family. And one of them's easier than the other. But like the priest introduces a new horizon by which a new criterion for Eddie to make the judgment is like, God wants us to do the right thing. And like for Eddie, that's like the watershed moment where it's like, I know what I need to do. Yeah, I wouldn't be doing right by the studio or the people at the studio who need me. So I have to like, you know, tell my secretary, get back to the Lockheed guy and say, thanks, no thanks. I don't know if that answers the question that you were asking.
I don't remember the question I asked.
I sat down very intentionally with Brother Angelus at lunch today because he's seen the movie before as well, and he knows the work of the Coen Brothers.
Yeah, we'll have to have him on soon.
Yeah, you'll have to ask him. But one of the things that he mentioned, and I told him, like, Michael asked me to show up with 3 questions. So he, one of the questions that he said that's really worthy of asking and thinking about the movie after having seen it is, what is the criterion by which people are judging the value of things? And how does that affect the story that they're telling? Because everyone has a story that they're telling, whether they're saying that they're telling a story or not. The movie studio kind of has a story that, like, it's telling, and Eddie's kind of implicated it in the story that it's telling because it's, like, kind of fueled by its own interest to continue making money. Is the people who make these movies are good, upstanding people. The communists have this story that they're telling, which is, we hold the keys of history, and, like, we know how things are going to work out, and, like, we are going to be the future because, like, this is how, like, it's just what's going to happen. But there, and I don't know, there's, like, I think there seems to be kind of a critique of, like, both ends of that. And, like, it seems like the Coen brothers are kind of, like, maybe indicating both of these are somehow inadequate. Like, it's not just money. It's not just about the money. It's also not just about the power. It's not just about, like, the means of production and, like, all that sort of thing.
We're not talking about money. We're talking about economics.
That's right.
That's my favorite that the communists say. But go on. What were you were
so and like the what each of the characters or, like, group of characters thinks is, like, the most important thing seems to inform the story that they tell themselves and then they think is worthy of telling other people. For the communists, it's the studio, and, like, so the story that they've told themselves is, like, look, we're the little guys and we weren't looked out for. It's like the studio didn't have our best interest at heart. It didn't take care of us. So that's what they feed to Baird Whitlock, who buys it hook, line, and sinker because, like, he's like we said, kind of an airhead.
And then Baird, I mean, the funny thing is, so then you think about the title itself, Hail Caesar, Story of the Christ, and then of course that immediately comes up with the famous thing, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's.
I thought of a connection there too, but I hadn't.
And I think Baird, being the airhead that he is, he really is this decadent Roman centurion, just sort of yucking it up in the royal palace or whatever you would call it.
Yeah, talk about being typecasted.
Yeah, and that's a depiction of. It seems to be a true depiction, and then when his character is confronted with Christ on the cross, there's that moment that ties it all up in a bow where he can't say, "Oh, we lost a light." It's okay. It's the Godhead. The divine presence is yet to be shot.
Yeah, that's right.
Get a little mood lighting here, and of course he's at the feet of Christ, and he's supposed to say the line, if we had but faith.
Yeah.
But he can't remember faith. He can't remember that one line.
Yeah.
He keeps stumbling over it. If we had but, and then he just blows it and just can't remember it.
Yeah. And the director has to yell out, faith.
And he's like, changed it. And that's his final word.
And you're like, okay, take 5, everyone. Like they're going to reshoot it.
Yeah.
And that's, like, the last thing I think you see Baird's character, and, like, the next thing that they cut to is Eddie. Or is that the last thing in the movie? I can't remember now.
I think it is the last thing in the movie. Yeah. I think it is. And then the narrator comes in and let's check the time. It's 3:11. Go ahead.
So there's a few moments like that, and I think that maybe I like to think that that moment and then like the synchronized swimming number are things that I would cite in support of making the case that like the Coen brothers are not attempting to show us like the fullness of the gospel, the Godhead, which, you know, the
why the synchronized swimming number?
I point to it because it's this moment of like, so I point to it as like a similar moment of like, it's like it almost kind of comes out of nowhere. It's this moment of like really drastic like beauty and orderliness and being like very well organized and put together, and the tension's cut at the end by Deanna Moran kind of losing it, throwing her tiara at the guy who's directing the band, and like, you know, all of like the illusion of it being this like really beautiful, like kind of very well put together thing is shattered in a moment. And I think you see the exact same thing happen with Baird giving his monologue at the foot of the cross.
I think you see it with the communists as well, because they have these orchestrations as well, and they have this master plan. What's funny is that the symbolism that stuck out to me this time around, speaking of the whale, I was like, I could not help but think back to that whale when the submarine rises.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't made that connection, but go on.
And I was asking Ella, like, I was asking my wife, what do you think that meant? And she was just like, well, the belly of the beast. You know, Deanne is sucked into the belly of the beast, and yeah, it does show this like beautiful synchronized thing that just human error is going to completely screw it up. Deanne's gonna take her crown off and just be like, whatever. Turns out the problem is she's pregnant, so she's busting at the seams.
Which is why it's humorous that she's named Deanna after Diana, the Roman goddess of chastity.
Yeah,
she's pregnant out of wedlock.
And she doesn't even know who the dad is. But
yeah, because Eddie asked her, it's like, it's this guy, right? And she's like, yeah, pretty sure.
Pretty sure. Okay, if we had to only talk about. But anyway, like that's an example of just like other plans falling apart, where they think they have these machinations. Even in the movies that they write, they have these things where they're just like, oh, you remember when so-and-so took the nickel instead of the whatever? I can't even remember the example. Just this minute thing that no one would notice. I think we changed a few minds there. So they're perfectly content actually with going along with the storytelling factory, and they find use in it too in the pictures, and it's kind of funny in a way. If you think about, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but they're kind of still serving Capitol Pictures, even though they think that they're trying to dismantle it. But it just keeps going.
So I think there seems to be kind of a question here that they're kind of like playing two things off of each other. One is the ideal, the other is the ideology. Because like the communists have this ideology that they're trying to uphold. But Eddie is this like embodiment of the ideal of Hollywood, which is that stories need to be told. They need to be told well because people need to have put in front of them goodness, truth, and beauty. In a way that's like going to be helpful for them to see and experience, which it's in one way shallow that he's asking this room full of like two priests, a minister, and a rabbi, is there anything like that's going to offend anyone here? But like I think for Eddie, from his point of view, that's an important question to ask because he knows that the picture has value and that people need to see it,
and he's actually listening to what they're saying. Funnily enough, he's very confused by his own by the Catholic priest of his own faith,
right?
As he's trying to explain the the Trinity.
It's striking to me that the communists are left like just with the ideology at the end, and like it's not satisfying.
Right, because their money just falls into the water.
And like what is the guy's name? Burt Gurley?
Yeah, Burt Gurdy.
Burt Gurdy. Okay, yeah. And
the
like,
dancing actor. Channing Tatum.
Yeah, the guy who's like the triple threat. He can sing, he can act, he can dance.
Yeah.
He has to like drop the briefcase full of money. Which is like, that's like more, according to their way of thinking, he should have let the dog drown. But like the dog, whose name is Engels, after like the Marxist writer.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Is like, he catches the dog, drops the briefcase, and then like gets on the sub and goes away. And like the communists have to row back to shore, where they're summarily arrested by the police that are arriving there. And, they're left with nothing because they don't have Baird Whitlock anymore, because Hobie comes and gets him like just in time. As Hobie's driving away with Baird, he sees in his rearview mirror the police pull into their Gertie's like Malibu beachside home, and like all of the other communists get arrested. Eddie is able to, after he has this epiphany with his priest, where the priest says, God wants us to do the right thing, he realizes, I need to do right by the people who are relying on me and by the studio, because this story needs to be told. People need to be prepared for seeing and experiencing God when he decides to show up. And I think that's why it's important to note that like the Coen Brothers are Jewish, because if they're Jewish, they're like still in a posture of waiting for the Messiah to come. That's why the divine presence is yet to be shot.
Oh yeah. Right.
But like that posture of like expectation is something that's like very much important for like me as a Catholic to remember as well. I mean, around Advent, we're always reminded of the fact that we're not just remembering that we were waiting for Christ to come for a long time, and then he came, like God became man around 2,000 years ago. Like the first readings that you hear in the season of Advent are all apocalyptic. We're waiting for him to come again. But Bernard of Clairvaux says there's a third coming. Like, we're also waiting for him to come today. He's going to show up today too. He's going to show up through like the people around me. And it's interesting to me that like it's maybe even like a little heavy-handed, the fact that like, they have the divine presence is to be shot, but you see like Baird Whitlock being directed through all these like different, like kind of contorting his face and like being surprised and awestruck in front of like seeing Jesus Christ give him water. You see how God's acting through how he's affecting the people in the movie. And Eddie's kind of like a big instrument of that, as like he's a just man, he's a good man, he's a man of God.
I think it'd be excellent to close on a discussion about another good man in the movie. My favorite character, one of my favorite characters of all time, Hobie Doyle. And just because we haven't talked about him really at all yet, but we've got another. This is basically the one guy that Eddie Mannix can look at, can glance at
and tell him like it is.
Instantly trust. And exactly. Tell him the truth of what's going on.
Yeah.
And know that he's the guy to trust.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much I could say about Hobie. I'll just say that I love his relationship, his kind of burgeoning relationship with Carlotta.
Yeah.
The sort of, I don't know what you call it, like Latin lover actress.
Yeah.
But she's really just in real life just a sweetheart.
Yeah.
And they're put on this arranged first date by the studio, and it just seems so cynical. And yet, out of this cynical quote unquote thing, like you can tell that there's some real, that these are two good people who like each other, and it could like burgeon into something else. And they could be, if I know Eddie's a married man, but if Eddie's like kind of the priest or the little monk of the film, I think Hobie Doyle could easily be maybe a young man, like he's the young Eddie in a way. He's about to step into the rest of his life. Actually, he's in a transition point per the studio.
That's right.
Did you talk about that?
I mean, that's like one of those things that's like hilarious in the movie when it's happening, and it's just like, hey Hobie, we're assigning you to a new picture. Okay, the studio's changing your image. Okay. All right. And we're going to arrange for you to go to a film premiere with Carlotta. What's her name? Carlotta Valdez.
Valdez, I think. Yeah.
Carlotta Valdez. What about, and he has like a logistical question. It's like, don't worry, the studio's going to take care of it. They're changing your image.
All right.
Well, all right.
They're changing my image.
and like I think like the second or third time the guy says it, like the Coen Brothers are kind of like masters at, like playing something up in an absurd way in order to call your attention to it. Like that aspect of like, I don't know, like the studio does have this power to affect the way that like people perceive people like Hobie. He gets taken from an environment. He is a stranger. Like he's a stranger to the world of Hollywood. He makes his way on through like kind of being a stunt double, but then it's discovered that he can sing. This is an aside. I also thought of the goddess Diana, the goddess of chastity, who's associated with the moon, because in the film that he and Carlotta go to see, Hobie's singing a song to the moon. So like there's this purity about him, and you see it come out too. Like he's a man free of duplicity. He's got like no axes to grind. He doesn't need to get fished out of any like embroiled scrapes. He just like, he's a good old boy from down home who's completely out of place.
He's not even really an actor.
No, he's not.
He can only be himself, and that's what people responded to.
And I think that's why like he gets reassigned when they can't find someone for this like really like high drama movie that Lawrence and like later in the movie he like comes into Eddie's office and he's like furious because that's my favorite scene in the movie in terms of like it being like I think it's like the funniest scene in the movie. Hobie is recast in this movie in a drawing room scene and he can't do it. No. He can't do it because he can't be anyone other than himself. He's a man free of duplicity. And I think it's hilarious. Once again, another example of like the Coen Brothers, like repeating something ad absurdum for the sake of calling attention to it. Like you can't just change someone, like you can't just change the image of someone like Hobie in a way that like fits into the normal categories. If only it were that simple. Would it were so simple.
Yes. Trippingly.
Don't
say trippingly. Say the line trippingly.
Would that were so simple, trippingly. All of that I think is like Hobie's an interesting character along with Eddie because they are like they are the two good men who are able to like kind of save the day by being who they are. Like no one needs to like actually tell Hobie what he needs to do when Hobie realizes that he sees Bert Gertie when he's out on his date with Carlotta with the briefcase that Hobie recognizes because it's the same briefcase from Eddie's office, but also because it has his belt around it, because he offers his belt to Eddie when the briefcase won't stay shut because of how much money he has crammed in there.
It's ransom money.
So like Hobie knows exactly what's in that briefcase. He knows that it's ransom money, and he knows like if I follow the money, it's going to lead me to Baird Whitlock, who's been taken hostage. And like I love it, the scene with Hobie and Eddie in the office where Hobie can't see what Eddie's doing. Eddie's trying to cram this like $100,000 of ransom money in the briefcase and trying to get it shut. And they're talking about Hobie's problems with being in this movie. That's like the drawing, the drawing room drama.
In this one.
That's right. And Hobie's like, it's good old boy from down home. He's got a can-do attitude. He's gonna keep trying as long as Mr. Lawrence is willing to like put in the effort to like work with him and try to get it to a place that he can actually succeed. It's really funny that you see the same scene later on the movie screen, and you hear like all the same lines being given by this lady actress, and instead of like you hearing Hobie like blunder through the line, "Would that it were so simple," he says, "It's complicated."
Yeah, just a complete rewrite. I'll actually sometimes I'll show that scene as an example of editing, because you see that in the editing room too, and Frances McDormand gets her scarf caught in the editing apparatus. But it's editing the picture, but it's also editing on set of just like, okay, well, this guy can't say "would that it were so simple." We have to like rewrite it and work it to him. So it's complicated. Yeah, and would that it were so simple. Why don't you just say it's complicated?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and then I just love his little rope tricks, which he apparently learned to do in real life.
Oh, really?
That actor, yeah, he can actually do that with a little noodle and like catch the finger. It's a great moment. Any other side characters that you want to shout out? Because there's so many.
Yeah.
Actually, one is the old communist professor Marcuse is the only other person in the movie who's based on a real human or real guy.
Really?
Yeah, I looked it up, and I didn't look much into it. It seemed like pretty straight up depiction of him saying the things that he would have said, and staring blankly at Baird Whitlock while he tries to regurgitate what he said
through his own experience.
Talk about someone who's the exact opposite of Hobie, because things go in and like they're just he doesn't even seem like a person. Like, who is Baird Whitlock? What even is Baird Whitlock? Yeah. He's just this like machine that can somehow spout out in some way or other what you've given him.
He reminds me of Stepan Arkadyevich from Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Yeah.
How so?
Well, I mean, he's just like this, the same sort of thing. Like, there's this scene near the beginning of the book where you find out he's been cheating on his wife, and it describes like his favorite newspaper, and the reason for why it's his favorite newspaper is because it's the most popular, and it's like just like the views that everyone else is holding, and he liked the kind of the hazy-headed feeling he experienced after like reading it, where it's like when you're reading it, it's almost kind of like this guy's like getting like a little bit of a buzz off of just like fitting in. Like, he's just doing what everyone else is doing, and kind of like going along with the flow. And I think Baird Whitlock's kind of the same sort of thing. And he because like from like references in the film that he's prone to like going on like benders, like getting involved in like amorous affairs and stuff.
Yeah. And
like those are the sort of things that like Eddie consistently needs to like get him out of, so that like the studio doesn't look bad. But he's a good actor, and like that's like somehow the thing that's like the most true about him, and Eddie needs to be there to remind him of it. Eddie doesn't
smack him around.
Yeah, and Eddie doesn't have to remind Hobie of who he is. I think it's important to note that Eddie actually knows that he can trust Hobie with the information, like Baird Whitlock's been kidnapped. This is ransom money, and like I'm gonna go give it to give it to the future.
It's back to how we open this podcast. If you have, the picture has worth, and if you have worth, if you serve the picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other final thoughts, Brother Max?
I don't know. I think the like the last parting shot that I think I'd have to say is like there's a lot of depth to the film, and like it repays rewatching.
How's your movie watching life changed since you've become a monk?
Yeah, a lot. I don't do it as often as I used to. It's typically a very intentional thing, or we'd have movie night on Fridays in the monastery, but don't have as much time as I used to. I have other more important things to do now. Frequently.
I obviously do not.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I have this podcast. But Brother Max, thanks for coming on the show. People can look up the monks at St. Benedict's Abbey at kansasmonks.org, and they can hear some of your commentaries on Bible verses on 60 Seconds for Sunday.
That's right. Yeah, we also
along
have
with the other monks of St. Benedict's.
That's right. And there are a couple other video series that we do. The Communio on the communion antiphons for each Sunday. Brother Angelus, Prior Levin, and Brother Florian kind of rotate through those. And if you or someone you know would make a good monk and may potentially have a vocation, they can go to monkvocations.org and contact us. Get in touch with me.
Brother Max is an Eddie Mannix. He really is. He's a good guy. So thanks so much for coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's Hail Caesar, and I'm Michael Coy. I didn't even introduce myself at the show. I'm Michael Coy. This is the Catholic Film Club. And next month, for our film club feature, we're going to be talking about The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which I've never seen. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, it'll be an adventure for...
Is that another Coen Brothers film?
No, it's a John Ford movie with Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I've never seen it, and I'm excited. So... got our socials on the bottom, and just like and subscribe and do all the things you know you're supposed to do. Do the right thing, as Hail Caesar tells us to. All right. God bless.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks.